the most chilling cold cases still unsolved in American true crime files. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. On a warm summer night in 1992, in the quiet city of Springfield, Missouri, 3 women disappeared without a trace. Cheryl Levitt, her daughter Susie Streeter, and Susie's friend Stacy McCall were last seen at Cheryl's home after attending their high school graduation. By morning, their purses, cars, and all personal belongings were still inside. There was no sign of struggle, no broken windows, just an empty house and a permanently unanswered question. Where did they go? This was not an isolated event. Across America, thousands of cold cases haunt police departments, families, and the public. These unsolved disappearances share a common thread. They lack closure, finality, and often logic. Chapter 1 of our journey through America's most chilling cold cases begins with those who walked into the shadows and never returned. The Springfield 3 case has puzzled investigators for over 3 decades. Despite national media coverage, multiple documentaries, and renewed investigative efforts, no suspects have ever been charged. Authorities scoured local areas, lakes, and forests. A tip that the bodies had been buried under a hospital parking garage led to speculation, but the cost of excavation prevented action. Years later, new detectives assigned to the case continued to plead for information, while the community held vigils that felt more like mourning for the unknown than hopeful reunions. What makes this case especially chilling is how ordinary the night was. It was supposed to be a celebration. Graduation caps had just been tossed in the air. Future plans were made. Then nothing. In February 2004, 21-year-old nursing student Maura Murray emailed her professors claiming there had been a death in the family and she would be taking time off. There was no death. She packed up her dorm room, withdrew money from an ATM, bought alcohol, and drove north to New Hampshire. Her car crashed on a rural road. A passing bus driver stopped to help. She told him not to call the police. When police arrived minutes later, Maura was gone. Dogs couldn't track her scent beyond a few feet. There were no footprints in the snow leading into the woods. No surveillance video. No confirmed sightings. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Was she running from something or to something? Was she harmed by a stranger, or did she stage her own disappearance? Theories abound, but the truth remains buried beneath 20 years of speculation. In 2013, Brandon Lawson, a 26-year-old father from Texas, left his home after an argument with his partner. He called his brother for help after running out of gas on a remote stretch of highway. The 911 call he placed is infamous for its confusion. In it, Brandon sounds frantic. He mentions being chased and people being out in the woods. The dispatcher struggles to understand him. The call ends abruptly. Brandon's truck was found, but he was never seen alive again. Years later, partial human remains were located near the area. DNA confirmed it was Brandon. But how he died and what exactly happened that night remains unanswered. These cases aren't just stories. They are real lives interrupted by something unknown, possibly evil. The common threads: vanishing without signs of struggle, sudden, uncharacteristic behavior before disappearance, areas either too remote or too familiar, loved ones left in limbo. The victims all have families still asking questions, still searching, still waiting. Cold cases often go unsolved due to a lack of evidence or technology. In the 1990s and early 2000s, cell phones weren't as traceable. Surveillance wasn't widespread. DNA databases were limited. But even with today's advancements, leads often dry up. Eyewitness memories fade. Physical evidence degrades. And sometimes people just don't talk. Yet the pain never fades. Every year, anniversaries reopen old wounds. Every new case feels like a bitter reminder of past ones that were never solved. Imagine waking up every day not knowing what happened to your sister, daughter, friend, not knowing if she's dead or being held somewhere. Families often become their own investigators. They launch websites, file FOIA requests, raise funds for billboards, and organize searches. In many cases, they do more work than authorities. Their stories are often heartbreaking. Some die never knowing the truth. Others keep the flame alive through generations, passing down hope as if it were an heirloom. In this series, we'll explore cases like these in depth. The ones with missing answers and haunting questions. The ones that leave investigators speechless and families desperate. Because behind every headline is a human story. And behind every mystery is someone who deserves to be found. Some murders chill the spine not just because of the brutality, but because of the silence that follows. No witness, no clear motive, no weapon recovered, just a lifeless body, a grieving community, and a lingering question. Who could have done this? Welcome to Chapter 2, where we dive into America's most unsettling murder mysteries. Cases that made headlines but never found closure. These are stories where killers left behind more fear than clues and somehow vanished, as if swallowed whole by the shadows. He was around 4 to 6 years old, naked, bruised, and stuffed into a cardboard box, found on the side of a road in Fox Chase, Philadelphia. No name, no parents looking for him, just a child murdered and discarded like garbage. Dubbed America's unknown child, the boy in the box case remains one of the most haunting cold cases in U.S. history. Despite thousands of tips and media coverage, decades passed without identification, until 2022, when DNA finally gave him a name, Joseph Augustus Zarelli. But even with his identity known, the question of who killed him and why is still unanswered. Did someone in his own family do this? Was he part of an illegal adoption? A trafficked child? Theories abound, but none have led to an arrest. In July 1974, a young woman's mutilated body was discovered in the dunes near Provincetown, Massachusetts. Her hands had been removed. Her teeth were pulled out. She had been nearly decapitated. For almost 50 years, no one knew her name. No missing persons report matched her. Her face was reconstructed multiple times by forensic artists. Still nothing. Then in 2022, the FBI used forensic genealogy to finally identify her as Ruth Marie Terry, a 37-year-old from Tennessee. But again, solving half the puzzle wasn't enough. Who killed her? Why such brutal disfigurement? The delay in identification allowed her killer decades of freedom. Many now wonder if he ever knew the police were closing in, or if he ever worried at all. 3 young girls, Carmen Colon, Wanda Volkovich, and Michelle Manza, were raped and strangled in the Rochester, New York, area in the early 1970s. What connected them was eerie. Each had alliterative initials, CC, WW, MM, and each was found in a town with the same first letter as their name. Police believed the killer was playing a twisted game. Despite hundreds of leads, the case went cold. Several suspects emerged, including convicted child rapists and serial killers. None were ever charged. Decades later, the case still feels like a taunt. A murderer who turned death into a disturbing puzzle and walked away untouched. Between 1986 and 1989, at least 8 people, 4 couples, were murdered or disappeared along Virginia's picturesque Colonial Parkway. Most were young lovers, last seen parked in secluded areas. Some were found in burned cars. Others were strangled or shot. One couple's bodies were never found, only their abandoned car near the water. There were no known links between the victims, and no consistent pattern in the method of killing. Some were tied up, others were not. Some crime scenes showed signs of staging, others didn't. Multiple suspects were questioned, but no one was ever charged. Some believe it was the work of one serial killer. Others think it was multiple copycats. Either way, the killings stopped as abruptly as they began. Today, the Colonial Parkway remains more than a tourist route. It's a silent witness to unthinkable crimes still unsolved. For teenage girls, Amy, Eliza, Sarah, and Jennifer were working the late shift at a yogurt shop in Austin, Texas. They never made it home. When firefighters responded to a blaze at the shop, they found the girls inside bound, gagged, sexually assaulted, and shot execution style. The public was horrified. The police were stumped. 4 suspects were eventually arrested and charged, but their confessions were later thrown out due to inconsistencies. DNA testing failed to match any of them. Years passed. Trials collapsed. To this day, the true killer or killers have never been brought to justice. And Austin still carries the scar of a case that never found peace. There's something uniquely terrifying about an unsolved murder. It suggests the killer is still out there, older, perhaps quieter, but free. It also forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. That not every crime has a clean ending. That justice sometimes doesn't arrive. The fact that so many of these cases involve misidentified or unidentified victims, vanishing suspects, or strangely symbolic details only deepens the mystery. The more we examine them, the more they stare back, daring us to make sense of their chaos. Why do killers in these cases get away? Lack of early leads. Many crime scenes were contaminated or disturbed before police arrived. Technology gaps. Some occurred before DNA was routinely collected or analyzed. Fear and silence. Witnesses may have been too afraid or involved themselves. False confessions. In some cases, suspects confessed under duress, leading to years of wasted focus. Each of these cases represents a failure of systems, a failure of justice, and sometimes a failure of timing. Today, organizations like the Cold Case Foundation and the Doe Network are working to solve old crimes using new technology. Forensic genealogy, like that used in the Golden State Killer case, is breathing new life into dusty evidence boxes. Some police departments are forming cold case squads dedicated to reviewing unsolved crimes full-time. Crowdsourced investigations, podcasts, and social media sleuths are also playing their part, sometimes uncovering new leads where traditional methods failed. But time is always the enemy. Witnesses pass away, memories fade, evidence degrades. The question is, can technology and perseverance outpace the decay of time? Each of these murders tells us something terrifying, that monsters don't always leave fingerprints, and sometimes justice is just out of reach. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. They were seen one moment, then gone the next. No screams, no struggle, just eerie silence and trails that led nowhere. These are the cold cases that haunt even the most seasoned investigators, not because they are filled with violence, but because they make no sense, because logic fails, because the ghosts of these victims seem to be hiding just behind the veil of understanding. Let's walk deeper into the mist. It was August 30th, 2013. Bryce Laspiza, a 19-year-old college student, called his mother from his car just hours north of Los Angeles. He told her he was coming home. They talked a few times that day. He'd driven all night. He sounded exhausted. Something wasn't right. At 2 a.m., a tow truck driver who'd helped Bryce earlier said the young man had parked on the side of a remote road for hours, doing nothing, just sitting. The trucker offered help. Bryce declined. Hours later, his SUV was found at the bottom of a steep embankment, wrecked but empty. The back window was smashed out. Blood was on the headrest, but there was no sign of Bryce. No footprints, no drag marks, no scent trail for dogs to follow. It was as if he had stood up and vanished into air. Was he injured and disoriented? Did someone pick him up? Or did Bryce stage the scene to walk away from his life? To this day, no one knows. Sneha Phillip was a physician in Manhattan. On September 10, 2001, she went shopping in Soho. Surveillance footage caught her entering a department store. That would be the last confirmed sighting of her. Then the world changed. The next morning, 2 planes struck the World Trade Center. Chaos exploded. In the aftermath, Sneha's disappearance faded into the background. For years, her family believed she'd run to the towers to help victims and perished. But no trace of her was found among the remains. Others suggested she had a troubled marriage and maybe even a secret life. Rumors circulated. Did she use 9/11 to disappear? The courts initially denied her status as a victim, only to reverse the decision years later, listing her as one of the thousands lost that day. But what really happened to Sneha? Did she perish as a hero? Or did she walk away from a life she no longer wanted? On June 13, 2001, 19-year-old Jason Jalkowski got a call from his job at a local radio station. They needed him to come in early. Since he didn't have a car, a coworker agreed to pick him up at a nearby high school, just a 7-minute walk from his Omaha home. Jason never showed up. No one saw him leave. No one saw him arrive. He simply disappeared on the short walk between his house and the school. The sidewalks were familiar. The distance was walkable. There were no known enemies. He had plans, goals, and a steady job. His bank account was untouched. His phone was quiet. And nearly 25 years later, there are still no leads. How does someone vanish without a single clue in broad daylight in the middle of suburban America? It was supposed to be a fun night out with friends. Lauren Spirer, a 20-year-old student at Indiana University, had partied into the early hours of June 3, 2011. Witnesses said she left a friend's apartment barefoot and intoxicated around 4:30 a.m. Surveillance cameras tracked her path for a bit, but then she simply vanished. Police searched dumpsters, rivers, wooded areas. They questioned dozens of classmates. Nothing turned up. No body. No belongings. No signs of struggle. What makes Lauren's case so haunting is that it feels solvable. Friends were nearby. Cameras were rolling. Yet every step she took led her into a void. Rumors of a drug-fueled night gone wrong have persisted. So have claims of a cover-up. But none of it has led to her. Her parents still keep her face in the public eye, hoping that someone, somewhere, will finally say what they know. February 14, 2000. 9-year-old Asha Degree packed a bag with candy, clothes, and her favorite book. Then, in the middle of a stormy night, she slipped out of her North Carolina home and walked into the darkness. Several motorists reported seeing a small child walking alone along the highway. One even turned around to check on her. But by the time they got there, she was gone. The next day, her parents reported her missing. For days, the community searched, heartbroken and confused. A child running away without a known cause? Without signs of abuse or neglect? It didn't add up. A year later, her backpack was found buried in plastic bags 26 miles away. That discovery raised more questions than answers. Why did she leave? Who helped bury the bag? And why has no other trace of Asha ever been found? Each of these cases features a moment, a fork in the road when logic breaks down. People saw them. They were alive, often in safe spaces. Then something changed. Common patterns include a sudden withdrawal from daily routine, vanishing from familiar places in full daylight, physical evidence found but no body, witness accounts that conflict or confuse. Many times, the missing are dismissed, assumed to be runaways, assumed to be unstable, but often they were simply vulnerable in ways no one recognized. In some cases, foul play seems likely. In others, the clues are maddeningly scarce. But always, families are left to replay the final known moments over and over, searching for anything they missed. As days turn to weeks, and weeks to decades, memory becomes a double-edged sword. Witnesses second-guess themselves. Police turn over. Evidence degrades. Technology improves, but without new clues, it can do little. Cold case detectives often say the first 48 hours are crucial. But what happens when the 49th hour arrives with no leads? When days stretch into years with no resolution? The pain becomes permanent. The hope becomes heavier. One interesting twist in recent years is the role of online sleuths. Forums like Reddit, web sleuths, and YouTube channels have revived attention for many of these cases. Amateurs have dug into phone records, satellite images, and police reports. In some rare instances, they've even helped uncover major leads. But the double-edged sword of online investigation is speculation. Families are sometimes re-traumatized by false accusations or conspiracy theories that spiral out of control. Still, the attention means the stories are remembered, and sometimes that's the only path left toward justice. Not every mystery ends in an arrest or even an answer. But to stop telling these stories would be to forget the people at the center of them. The sons, daughters, mothers, students, and friends who deserved more than a headline. Behind every ghost trail is a real life, frozen in time, waiting to be found. They are the forgotten, the unnamed, the ones without birth certificates, without gravestones bearing a real name, and in some cases without faces. These are the cases that take us beyond murder or disappearance, into identity itself. Who were they? Why were they left to be anonymous in death? In 1957, the body of a young boy was found wrapped in a blanket and stuffed inside a cardboard box in Philadelphia. He was badly beaten. His hair had been crudely chopped. There were no signs of who he was, where he came from, or why he was killed. The public dubbed him the boy in the box. Decades went by. Artists rendered age progressions. Detectives followed thousands of leads. The case inspired books, documentaries, and even its own section of the FBI's website. Only in 2022, 65 years later, did advancements in DNA help identify him as Joseph Augustus Zarelli. But even now, no one has been charged with his murder. Halloween 1980. A young girl's body was found off a rural road in Huntsville, Texas. She had been sexually assaulted and beaten. She carried no ID, but she had spoken to several people that night, saying she was trying to find the county jail to visit a friend. Despite being seen by many, no one knew her name. In 2021, forensic genealogy finally gave her back her identity: 14-year-old Sherry and Jarvis. But again, no suspect has ever been caught. Her life remains largely a mystery. So does her death. In 1981, a young woman's body was found in Ohio. She wore a distinctive buckskin jacket, had braided hair, and carried no belongings. She had been strangled, likely shortly after being dropped off by a truck driver. She became known as Buckskin Girl. For over 3 decades, her identity was unknown, until 2018, when DNA linked her to a family in Arkansas. Her name, Marcia King. Though her identity is known, her killer is not. There are over 40,000 unidentified remains in America. Thousands of people who have never been claimed. Some are buried in unmarked graves. Others are listed in databases like NAMUS and the Doe Network, waiting for someone to recognize a smile, a scar, or a piece of clothing. Often, these victims came from marginalized communities. Some were runaways. Some were victims of trafficking. Others were simply forgotten by a system that didn't bother to ask too many questions. Each case is a locked door with no key in sight. To name someone is to give them dignity. A name connects a person to a family, a history, a story. When someone dies without that, their humanity is buried with them. That's why so many forensic artists and DNA investigators devote their careers to the unnamed. Why volunteers spend hours combing through missing persons reports and comparing them to cold cases. The journey to give someone back their name is one of the most important acts of justice there is. In the chilling realm of unsolved cold cases, perhaps the most unsettling are the ones where we know who the victim is, sometimes intimately, but their killer remains a mystery. These are not the nameless, not the forgotten, not the runaways with no history. These are beloved mothers, children, celebrities, and ordinary people whose lives were violently taken, leaving behind haunting legacies and unanswered questions. On December 26, 1996, 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey was found murdered in the basement of her family's upscale home in Boulder, Colorado. Her mother had called 911 earlier that morning to report a ransom note demanding $118,000. 8 hours later, JonBenet's body was found. The child's death was brutal. She had been strangled and suffered a skull fracture. The circumstances of the crime scene made no sense. The ransom note was bizarrely detailed and lengthy. The family reportedly didn't hear anything during the night, and the police response was heavily criticized. Despite years of suspicion focused on her parents and brother, no one has ever been charged. Advances in DNA testing have ruled out certain suspects but brought no new leads. The case remains one of the most famous and unsettling unsolved murders in America. December 6, 1991, Austin, Texas. A fire engulfed an "I can't believe it's yogurt" store. Inside, firefighters found the burned bodies of 4 teenage girls: Sarah Harbison, Jennifer Harbison, Eliza Thomas, and Amy Ayers. They had been gagged, shot in the head, and stacked atop each other before the store was set ablaze. The crime shocked the nation. For years, rumors and tips came and went. For men were arrested, but 2 convictions were later overturned due to lack of evidence and coerced confessions. To this day, the yogurt shop murders remain unsolved. Every anniversary, families gather to remember their daughters and to ask why no one has paid the price for the horror of that night. In 1996, 9-year-old Amber Hagerman was riding her bike near her grandparents' home in Arlington, Texas, when a man in a black pickup truck abducted her in broad daylight. A neighbor witnessed the abduction and called 911. For days later, Amber's body was found in a nearby creek. She had been sexually assaulted and murdered. Despite massive media coverage and police efforts, her killer was never found. Her tragic story led to the creation of the Amber Alert system, which has since saved hundreds of abducted children. But for Amber's family, justice has never arrived. Between 1986 and 1989, at least 8 people were killed along the Colonial Parkway in Virginia. The victims, young couples, were found in or near their cars, often in remote areas. Some were shot. Others were strangled. Some were posed in disturbing ways. Despite similarities in the cases, no one has ever been arrested. The FBI at one point believed it could be the work of a serial killer, but the case went cold. In recent years, families of the victims have teamed with journalists and private investigators to pressure authorities into revisiting the evidence. DNA retesting is ongoing, but no arrests have been made. In the 1990s, hip-hop was rocked by the murders of Tupac Shakur and Christopher Wallace, aka the Notorious B.I.G. Both men were gunned down in drive-by shootings, Tupac in Las Vegas in 1996, and Biggie in Los Angeles in 1997. Despite national headlines, millions of fans, and public pressure, both murders remain unsolved. Theories abound, from gang retaliation to record label feuds, but no arrests have stuck. These high-profile cases symbolize more than just loss. They represent an era, a culture, and 2 legacies forever marred by unanswered questions. What connects these cases is not just tragedy, it's the cruel absence of resolution. The pain of knowing who was lost but never who took them. The frustration of seeing decades pass while files gather dust, and families wait in a purgatory of grief. In some cases, suspects were identified but never charged. In others, there are no suspects at all. Sometimes evidence is mishandled. Sometimes it just doesn't exist. But as technology improves and awareness grows, hope persists. Cold case units are expanding. Forensic genealogy has cracked decades-old cases. And every year, stories once considered hopeless are reopened. These stories should not be left in silence. They should be spoken aloud, written about, and remembered, not as tragedies, but as ongoing pursuits of justice. Behind each headline is a life. Behind each victim is a family still waiting for the knock on the door that brings answers. We hope this 5-chapter series has stirred not just curiosity, but compassion. These cold cases are more than puzzles. They are cries for justice. Thank you for watching. And don't forget, someone somewhere knows something. Keep asking, keep watching, keep caring. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.